If you are a Calvinist, you cannot be pro-life. Now, as a disclaimer, my wish is to not discredit, deny, or denounce, or even discourage our many brothers and sisters of the Calvinist tradition from fighting for the life of the unborn, but rather to point out a glaring hypocrisy that undermines all of our efforts. In the imagination of Calvinists, who, by the way, are the guiltiest when it comes to strawmanning their opponents, that the debate between Arminians and Calvinists simply come down to Bible verses that Arminians refuse to acknowledge, and who only use the supporting text of John 3:16 for their position of whosoever. It almost seems comical that Arminians will ultimately bring up as a last resort Michael Servetus. Yes, that Michael Servetus, the bane of Calvinists everywhere. Michael Servetus was a revolutionary physician turned theologian who was executed by the wish and direction of John Calvin. When this is brought up, Calvinists typically counter with defending John Calvin's actions by saying that it was historically the political environment of Europe in the 1500s. Or they try to distance John Calvin from these actions altogether, which for later reasons we'll see is just not true. It's odd that Calvinists will applaud men like Paul Washer, who rightly critique 21st century cultural Christianity, while these same Calvinists will defend a 16th century cultural Christianity. We could dedicate, and will eventually dedicate, an entire video to this subject on its own. But let's look at the main defense that Calvinists give for the justification, or at least the excuse, for Servetus's execution. The first, that Calvin had no real authority in Geneva and advocated for a kinder form of punishment of beheading, which is still him advocating for Servetus's murder. The second point was that Servetus was a criminal. However, let's keep in view what his crime was. His crime was having a difference of opinion about the Trinity. Now, I'm a Trinitarian, but even I think it's a little extreme that we should go around killing non-Trinitarians. Do I suddenly now have the right to shoot Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses that come knocking on my door because they deny an essential doctrine like the Trinity? The third point is that God gives authority to the state to punish such criminals. And lastly, once again, this was simply the products of the times of a 16th century Europe. But how does this relate to the argument of abortion? And why is it inconsistent for Calvinists to be pro-life? Well, let us consider the state of the unborn. The first point doesn't really relate. However, the following points are extremely applicable. According to society, the unwanted fetus is a drain on society in just the same way as a criminal. However, they are not alone in this. Calvinists wrongly teach, through the doctrine of total depravity, that babies are just as evil as any criminal.
That human nature is such that imagine for a moment an 18-month-old baby that you're holding in your arms. And that 18-month-old baby sees that shiny watch on your wrist, and he grabs for your watch, and you pull his hand away and say no. He begins to scream and cry. He reaches for the watch again. You say no. He begins to flail his arms, even in the direction of your face. I submit to you that if that 18-month-old baby had the strength of an 18-year-old man, he would slaughter you there where you stand, Father, rip the watch off your arm, and walk across your bloody body out the door without feeling an ounce of remorse.
If pro-life Calvinists are going to argue that the United States does not have the right to murder babies that they also deem as being totally depraved and on par with any criminal, they also have to acknowledge that the state of Geneva did not have the right to punish heretics, and all such punishments would be deemed as murder.
Once something has been approved by the government, it's no longer immoral.
Yeah! Calvinists will refute this by downplaying John Calvin's role in Servetus's killing, but this contradicts historical accounts of Calvin's contemporaries, such as Martin Luther, but more so according to John Calvin himself, who not only vowed to make sure that Servetus would die, but took credit for his execution and would encourage other cities to do the same. Now, if Calvin had no authority, then why is he taking credit, which, at the least, makes him a liar? Calvinists who hate pragmatism will try to distance John Calvin's theology from his historic atrocities by wrongly comparing them to Thomas Jefferson and the Constitution, with Jefferson owning slaves. However, this is treating the Bible and theology as the same as something like the Constitution, or just a secular document. Jesus did not teach that you would know them by the books they write, but rather the love that they have for each other. The Apostle John makes this even more clear. As the scriptures record, no murderer that is unrepentant has eternal life. John Calvin should not be seen as a reliable source for spiritual things, especially since his theology teaches that the carnal mind cannot comprehend the things of the Spirit. Calvinists who continue to excuse John Calvin's actions do so at great personal peril, because they are calling what God calls evil, that is murder, good and acceptable. And their failure to recognize this only serves to erode the gospel and the pro-life message, which is what I believe you genuinely care about. It is for these reasons that you should do with Calvinism what the Bible does and renounce it.